It was a beautiful evening in the heart of the city. The sky outside was painted with soft shades of orange and pink as the sun began to set. Inside a grand luxury hotel, everything was glowing with golden lights. A special charity gala was happening that night, and the ballroom was full of rich and important people. They were dressed in expensive clothes, sparkling jewelry, and shiny shoes. Some were business owners, some were celebrities, and others were just wealthy guests who came to show their support and enjoy a night of elegance. Waiters and waitresses moved quickly and quietly across the ballroom, carrying silver trays filled with fancy appetizers and glasses of champagne. The room was filled with laughter, polite small talk, and the soft sound of classical music playing from hidden speakers. Everything looked perfect, like a scene from a movie. Among the many staff working that night was a young woman named Emily. She was in her early 20s, wearing the same black and white uniform as the other waiters. Her hair was tied neatly in a bun, and she wore simple black shoes that were already making her feet hurt. But she didn't complain. Emily always kept a polite smile on her face and did her job well. Most of the guests didn't even notice her to them. She was just another server walking around, handing out drinks and snacks. But Emily was more than she appeared to be. She had a quiet, calm way about her, and a kindness in her eyes that made her different. While others chatted and laughed, she stayed focused. Blending into the background of the elegant event, no one in that ballroom knew Emily's real story. No one knew that under her simple uniform was someone with a big dream and a hidden talent. Emily had been playing the piano since she was a little girl. Her parents discovered her gift when she was only 7 years old. She could hear a song once and play it back perfectly. It was like magic. Her fingers moved with ease, her ears caught every note, and her heart poured into every melody. Her parents worked hard to support her piano lessons. They weren't rich, but they believed in her talent. Emily studied classical music and dreamed of one day performing on big stages. She wanted to travel the world and play in beautiful concert halls. Music was her passion, her escape, and her greatest joy. But life wasn't easy. When Emily was 16, her mother got sick. The medical bills started to grow, and her father had to work extra jobs just to keep up. Emily had to make a hard choice. She paused her dreams, stopped going to her music academy, and began working part-time to help her family. First, she worked in cafes and grocery stores. Later, she got the job at the hotel where she served food at fancy events like this one. Even though her life had changed, she never let go of music. When she had free time, she would sneak into the music room at school or use an old keyboard at home. She didn't play as often as before, but her love for music never faded. Still, at the hotel, no one knew she could play. She never told anyone. She was shy, and she didn't want people to think she was trying to show off. As the night went on, Emily moved from table to table, offering trays with small bites of food. She heard the guests talking about art, travel, and money. Some of them joked loudly, others whispered about business deals. Emily stayed quiet, doing her job and watching the room with thoughtful eyes. In her heart, she sometimes imagined what it would be like to be on the stage, instead of serving those who were. She saw the grand piano sitting at the corner of the ballroom. Shining under the lights, it looked untouched, waiting for someone to bring it to life. Emily's fingers twitched slightly as she passed by it, remembering the feeling of the keys under her hands, but she kept walking. Her job was to serve, not to play. She didn't know that this night would be different. She didn't know that in just a short while, her life would take a surprising turn. That soon, the same people who didn't even look at her would be clapping, cheering, and remembering her forever. For now, she was just a waitress in a crowded room full of important people. But behind that calm smile and humble appearance was a story that was about to unfold. A night that would not just change her life, but also touch the hearts of everyone there. A night to remember was quietly waiting to begin. Emily walked past the grand piano in the corner of the ballroom again. Her eyes stayed on it for just a second too long. Then she looked away and continued doing her job. No one noticed her short glance, but inside her heart, a quiet wish was growing. She missed playing more than anything, the soft sound of piano keys. The way music made her feel free, happy, full of life. It had been too long. A few years ago, things were very different for her. Emily wasn't wearing a waitress uniform then. She used to wear dresses and sit on the piano bench for hours. Her fingers used to fly across the keys. Her teachers called her gifted. Some even said she could become one of the best pianists in the country one day. Her dream was big, but it didn't feel impossible. She believed in herself, and her parents did too. Her mom and dad worked hard to give her a chance. They didn't have a lot of money, but they made sacrifices so Emily could take piano lessons from a good teacher. They even bought her a small second-hand keyboard when she was a kid. It was old and missing some buttons, but to Emily, it felt like magic every time she played. The world felt brighter. She didn't care about anything else. Music made her feel alive, but life can change very fast. When Emily was in her teenage years, her mom started feeling tired all the time at first. They thought it was nothing serious, maybe just stress or weakness. But then the doctor gave them bad news. Her mom had a long-term illness. She needed strong medicine, regular checkups, and rest. The medical bills kept growing month after month. Her dad had to work longer hours just to keep food on the table and pay for treatment. That's when Emily made the hardest decision of her life. She was just 16, but she knew her family needed her. So she stopped her music classes. She told her teacher she would come back someday, but she never did. Instead, she started working part-time after school, first at a bakery, then at a supermarket, and finally at the hotel. She worked weekends, evenings, and sometimes even skipped school events to help at home. The grand piano in the hotel lobby reminded her of her dream every day. She walked past it dozens of times, but never dared to touch it. It felt too far away now, like it belonged in another world, a world where people had time, money, and freedom to follow their passion. Emily still loved music, but her hands only touched trays now. Not piano keys, sometimes at night when everyone was asleep. She would put on her old headphones and listen to piano music. Her favorite was Debussy's Clair de Lune. The notes were soft and full of feeling. It always made her cry, not because she was sad, but because it reminded her of who she used to be. And deep inside, she still believed that one day she would return to her music at the hotel. No one knew this part of her. To them, she was just a quiet, polite waitress who always showed up on time and did her work without complaining. Emily never talked about her piano skills, not even to her closest coworker. She was afraid people would laugh or think she was making it up. After all, why would a talented pianist be carrying trays at a rich people's party? But the truth was, Emily had not given up. She just paused her dreams for a while. She promised herself that when her mom got better, and when they had enough money again, she would go back to school. She would sit at a piano again and play not just for herself, but for the world. That night, as she walked around the ballroom, she saw people laughing, dancing, and enjoying their evening. None of them knew how much she had given up. None of them knew there was a girl among them who could make that piano sing. It made her feel small, almost invisible. But fate has a strange way of working. Life was watching, quietly planning something unexpected. Emily didn't know it yet, but her chance was coming soon. A moment was waiting for her, a moment that would bring her story back to life. All the years of practice, the pain, the sacrifice, and a love for music were about to come together in one powerful performance. She just didn't see it yet. She was still carrying trays, still hiding her light, but not for long. The night was going smoothly. Expensive food was being served. The ballroom lights sparkled like stars, and the guests seemed happy. Some people laughed loudly, while others clinked their glasses and talked in quiet voices. The music playing in the background was soft and elegant, just like the rest of the evening. Emily was busy, walking around the room with a silver tray in her hands. She gave out small plates of food and made sure everyone had what they needed. Her feet were starting to hurt, and her arms were a little tired. But she didn't complain. She was used to long nights like this. She just focused on doing her job. Well, then something unexpected happened. The music suddenly stopped. Not just the soft background music from the speakers, but everything. There was supposed to be a live piano performance that night. A famous pianist had been invited to play for the guests. He was known for his skill, charm, and beautiful music. People were excited to hear him play. Some even came just for him. But he wasn't there. The stage was empty, and the grand piano sat quietly in the corner. Untouched, guests started looking around, wondering what was going on. A few people whispered to each other, checking their watches and frowning. The room slowly became tense. The smiles began to fade, and questions started to float in the air. Where was the pianist? Emily watched from a distance. She noticed the event organizers rushing in and out of the ballroom. They looked worried. One of them was holding a phone to his ear, speaking quickly and shaking his head. Something was clearly wrong. A few minutes later, the hotel manager, Mr. Carter, stood near the side of the stage and tried to stay calm. He had just received news the famous pianist's flight had been delayed due to a sudden thunderstorm. He was stuck in another city and wouldn't make it to the event. The performance had to be canceled, or someone had to take his place, and fast. Mr. Carter whispered with the event team, trying to find a solution. "Do we have any backup?" he asked. One of the team members shrugged. "No backup, no replacement," another said. "We didn't think we'd need one." Mr. Carter looked around the ballroom. He couldn't let this ruin the night. The guests had paid a lot for this event, and they expected music. The charity team had promised a magical performance. And now there was only silence. He turned to the hotel staff and asked, "Does anyone here know how to play the piano?" At first, no one answered. The waiters and waitresses looked at each other, confused. They weren't trained musicians. They were just there to serve food and drinks. Emily stood in the back, holding her tray. Her heart began to beat faster. She looked at the piano, then at the manager, then back at the floor. Her fingers started to tingle, like they were remembering something, like they were ready. Should she say something? Her mind raced. She hadn't performed in front of people in years. What if she made a mistake? What if they laughed? What if no one listened? But what if they did? She took a deep breath and slowly stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I can play," she said. The other waiters turned their heads, surprised. Mr. Carter looked at her, eyebrows raised. "You can?" he asked. "Classical music?" Emily nodded. "Yes, I've trained for years." He looked her up and down. "Unsure? Have you played in front of a crowd like this before?" She shook her head. "Not like this, but I can do it." There was a pause, a heavy silence between them. The manager didn't have time to doubt her. There were no other options. And something in her eyes told him she meant what she said. "All right." He said at last, "Let's give it a try." Emily handed her tray to another staff member and walked slowly toward the piano. The guests watched with confusion, wondering what was going on. Some whispered, "Is that one of the servers? What's she doing? Where's the real pianist?" She climbed the small steps onto the stage, her heart pounding loudly in her chest. The piano bench felt cold beneath her as she sat down. She adjusted her posture, placed her hands above the keys, and took one more deep breath. Her fingers touched the piano gently, like she was greeting an old friend. This was the moment. Everything she had been through, every sacrifice, every long night, every hour spent practicing in quiet rooms had brought her here. She closed her eyes, and the first note rang out, soft and beautiful. The room fell silent again. But this time, not from confusion, from surprise, from curiosity, from something no one expected. Emily had begun to play, and the night was about to change forever. Emily sat in front of the piano, and for a moment, everything around her felt quiet. The lights above the stage were warm and bright, making her feel like she was in a dream. The sound of people talking, the clinking of glasses, and the laughter had all faded away. It was just her and the piano now. Her hands were shaking slightly. She could feel every pair of eyes in the room watching her. Some people looked surprised, some looked confused, and others looked almost annoyed. After all, they were expecting a famous pianist, not a young waitress in a black apron. Sitting nervously at the piano, she looked down at the shining black and white keys. Her heart was beating so fast she could feel it in her ears. For a moment, she thought about getting up and walking away. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe they would laugh. Maybe she wasn't good enough anymore. But then she remembered something, her mother's voice telling her, "Don't let fear stop your music." She remembered her teacher's words. Even silence becomes music when you believe in your heart. And most of all, she remembered how she felt when she played the piece. The joy, the magic, it was something no one could take away from her. Not even fear. She gently placed her fingers on the keys and closed her eyes. Then she began to play. The first few notes were soft and slow, like the sound of water moving gently. In a quiet river, it was Clair de Lune, one of her favorite pieces. Her fingers moved carefully at first, testing the keys. Feeling the music again after so long, the room started to grow still. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A waiter who was pouring wine paused, holding the bottle in the air. A woman holding her phone slowly lowered it. The guests turned their heads toward the stage, not sure what they were hearing, but knowing it was something special. Emily felt the music wrap around her like a warm blanket. Her fingers grew more confident, moving faster, dancing over the keys like they used to when she was younger. The nerves began to fade, replaced by focus, emotion, and deep love for the melody she was creating. She was no longer a waitress in that moment. She was a pianist, a storyteller, an artist. The grand piano responded to her touch like an old friend who had been waiting patiently for her return. Every note was filled with emotion, some soft and dreamy, others strong and powerful. The sound echoed through the ballroom, filling the high ceilings and bouncing off the walls. It was more than just music. It was a message, a piece of her soul. Some guests sat with their mouths slightly open, completely frozen in surprise. Others leaned forward in their chairs, listening closely. One older man wiped a tear from his eye. A woman in a red dress placed her hand over her heart. As the song continued, the room became quieter and quieter, until you could almost hear people breathing. Emily's hands moved like they were part of the piano, as if they had never stopped playing all those years. She wasn't reading music sheets. She didn't need to. The music was inside her, living in her heart and flowing through her fingers. After Clair de Lune, she moved on to Chopin's Nocturne, a piece full of deep feeling and beautiful sadness. She played it with such honesty that people could feel the emotion in every note. It wasn't just talent, it was real, raw feeling, the kind you can't fake. The sound of silverware, glasses, and small talk had completely disappeared. The only thing that filled the room now was her music. She had captured everyone, young and old, rich and poor, proud and humble. All of them were sitting in silence, lost in the sound, for the first time in years. Emily felt completely herself again. Her apron didn't matter. Her job didn't matter. What people thought didn't matter. All that mattered was the music, and how it made people feel. When she finished the second piece, she looked up. Her eyes scanned the crowd. They were still silent, but not because they were unimpressed. It was the silence that comes just before something beautiful sinks in. A silence full of wonder, shock, and respect. She could feel their eyes differently now, not with judgment, but with admiration. She wasn't invisible anymore. The same guests who hadn't even looked at her while she served them were now staring at her with wide eyes, some with tears, others with soft smiles. She could see it clearly now she had touched their hearts. She took another deep breath, placed her hands back on the keys, and started playing again. She wasn't finished yet. Her story was still being told, note by note, dream by dream, and this was only the beginning. Emily sat in the spotlight, her fingers gliding across the piano keys like they were dancing. The soft lights from the chandeliers above gently lit her face, and her eyes stayed focused on the keys. She had already played 2 pieces, one full of beauty, the other full of emotion. But now, something inside her said, "Keep going." Her fingers didn't pause for long. She began the next piece without looking up. It was Rachmaninoff this time, bold, powerful, and full of deep feelings. This piece was different from the others. It was stronger, heavier, with waves of sound that moved like storms and soft rains. It needed energy, passion, and control. Emily had all 3. Her body moved with the rhythm, her shoulders rising and falling, her fingers pressing the keys quickly and precisely. The sound filled the ballroom with rich, full music. Some people in the crowd were leaning forward in their seats now, completely caught in her performance. Others had their eyes closed, letting the music wash over them like a wave. No one was talking anymore. Not one fork scraped a plate. Not one phone rang. Not one whisper broke the air. The guests had forgotten their food, their wine, and even their conversations. All they could focus on was the young woman at the piano, a girl they hadn't even noticed earlier. They were seeing her now, really seeing her, not as a server, not as a background worker, but as an artist. As someone who had just changed the mood of the entire evening without saying a single word. People felt something they hadn't expected to feel that night. Some felt peaceful, others felt emotional, and a few even felt inspired. One guest, a man who owned several music halls, turned to his wife and whispered, "She plays like she was born for this." His wife nodded slowly, not taking her eyes off Emily. Another woman wiped her tears quietly, holding her chest as if the music had reached deep into her heart. Emily didn't know what the guests were feeling. She was inside her own world now. A world where music was the only language, where nothing else mattered, not her job, not her past, not her fears. Only the music mattered. Then something even more special happened after finishing the 3rd classical piece. Emily paused for a few seconds. She looked out at the silent room. Her hands rested gently on the keys. Then she smiled softly and began to play again this time. It was her own composition. No one knew it. But the music they were hearing now was written by Emily herself. She had created it during a very hard time in her life, when her mother was very sick and they had no money for medicine. She had written it in silence, in pain, in hope, and in love. Now she was sharing that part of herself with everyone in the room. The music was soft at first, like a lullaby. Then it grew louder, stronger, as if telling a story of struggle. Then hope, then triumph. It was like watching someone's heart open and speak. But through sound instead of words, the crowd didn't know where the piece came from, but they felt it deeply. Some had goosebumps. Others had tears in their eyes. A few clutched each other's hands or pressed tissues to their cheeks. The music had power, real power, not because it was loud, not because it was fast, but because it was true. When she finished, the final note floated in the air for a long second. And then silence fell again, a deep, meaningful silence. And then, suddenly, the silence broke into loud applause. People clapped like they never had before. A few stood up, others followed. Soon the whole ballroom was on their feet, giving her a standing ovation. The sound of hands clapping, people cheering, and some even whistling filled the entire space. Emily looked up, surprised, her eyes widened, and her lips parted in disbelief. She had not expected this, not at all. Her heart was racing not from fear now, but from joy, from something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Confidence and hope. She stood up slowly and gave a small bow. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her music had already spoken louder than words ever could. As she stepped away from the piano, still in a daze, the applause continued. People weren't just clapping for her music. They were clapping for her courage, her strength, her story. They didn't know all the details yet, but they knew one thing clearly. They had just witnessed something rare, something beautiful, something unforgettable. And it all started with a girl in an apron who dared to say, "I can play." Emily stood next to the piano, her hands still slightly shaking. The sound of clapping continued to echo through the ballroom. Her eyes scanned the room full of wealthy and powerful people. Faces that had once ignored her were now looking at her with wonder and respect. It didn't feel real. It felt like a dream she had once imagined while walking home from work at night. But now it was truly happening. The applause slowly began to fade. But the feeling in the room stayed the same, like everyone had just witnessed something magical. People whispered to one another, not with judgment, but with excitement, curiosity, and even admiration. Emily was about to step off the stage and quietly return to her job. But something unexpected happened. A man in a black suit walked quickly up to her. He was tall, with gray hair and kind eyes. He smiled and extended his hand. "That was absolutely breathtaking," he said. "I've been in the music world for over 30 years, and I haven't felt something like that in a long time." Emily didn't know what to say. She simply smiled and nodded, still trying to process everything. More people began to come up to her. One woman, dressed in a beautiful red gown, said, "You made me cry. I haven't cried for music in years." Another guest, who had stayed silent most of the night, came forward and said softly, "That was a gift. Thank you." Some guests started asking her questions. "Where did you study music? Are you a professional pianist? Do you perform at concerts?" Each time, Emily gave honest answers. "I studied piano when I was younger, but I had to stop to help my family. I'm just working at the hotel right now. Haven't played in front of people like this before." People couldn't believe it. They were shocked that someone with such talent had been working as a waitress. One man even said, "You shouldn't be serving food. You should be touring the world with that talent." Then came the moment that changed everything. A well-known music promoter stepped forward. He had watched the entire performance silently, standing in the back. Now, he smiled and pulled out his business card. "My name is Mr. Bennett," he said. "I organize concerts and sponsor musicians who have real talent, and you, my dear, have something special. I want to help you." Emily looked at him with wide eyes. "Help me how?" She asked softly. "I want to sponsor your return to music school." He replied, "Pay for your training, get you a piano if you need one, and connect you to the right people in the music industry. You belong on a stage." Not just behind a tray. Emily stood frozen for a moment. She didn't know what to say. Was this really happening? A few hours ago, she was just hoping to finish her shift without any broken plates or spills. And now, someone was offering to help her go back to her dream. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from sadness, but from overwhelming happiness. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Just say yes." Mr. Bennett smiled. She nodded slowly, unable to speak. Her heart was full, and her eyes sparkled with emotion. This was the moment she had waited for without even knowing it. Other guests joined in with offers of support. One couple offered to donate to help with her mother's medical bills. Another man invited her to play at a private event next month. Her simple act of courage stepping up to the piano had opened doors she never thought she'd even see. The hotel manager, Mr. Carter, came forward as well. He had tears in his eyes too. And he shook her hand with pride. "You just gave everyone a night they'll never forget," he said, "and you reminded me not to judge anyone by their job title." Emily smiled warmly. Her heart felt light, for the first time in a long time. She realized something beautiful people had seen her. Really seen her, not just as a server, but as a person with dreams, talent, and a story. She looked around at the crowd one last time before stepping down from the stage. She no longer felt like the invisible girl in the background. She was now part of the story, part of the memory. And even though her clothes were simple and she hadn't planned anything like this, she had left an impression so deep that no one would forget it. The night had started like any other, but it had turned into something magical, not because of a famous name or a big show, but because of one young woman's courage to say yes when life gave her a moment to shine. Emily didn't just play music that night. She changed her life, and she touched the hearts of everyone who listened. After the beautiful performance, Emily walked off the stage with her heart full and her hands still warm from the keys. She had never imagined that one night could change everything, but it had. The same guests who didn't notice her before were now cheering for her. Praising her and offering her help, she stepped into the hallway outside the ballroom. Trying to catch her breath, her eyes were shining with happy tears. She leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and whispered to herself, "It really happened." For a few minutes, she stood quietly, letting everything sink in. She thought about how scared she was before she played, about how close she came to saying nothing at all. If she had stayed silent, if she had let fear win, she would have missed the biggest moment of her life. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her best friend. "Emily, I saw a video of you playing piano on Instagram. Is that really you?" Emily's eyes widened. She hadn't even realized someone had recorded her. She opened the app, and there it was, a video of her sitting at the grand piano, her fingers moving fast and full of emotion. The video already had hundreds of likes and comments. People were saying things like, "This girl is amazing. She made me cry and I don't even know her. She's better than the real performer." Emily smiled and laughed softly. Her heart felt light. For so long she had worked in silence, hiding her talent, putting her dreams on hold. And now, suddenly, the world was listening. She returned to the ballroom, where the energy was still buzzing. Mr. Bennett, the music promoter who had spoken to her earlier, was waiting with a few papers in his hands. "Emily," he said kindly, "I've already spoken to a music school director I know. They want to meet you this week." Her mouth dropped open. "This week?" she asked, amazed. "Yes," he smiled. "I sent them your video too. They were very impressed. They said someone with your natural talent deserves to continue their journey." Emily's heart raced again. "But how can I afford it?" she asked. "I have bills. I take care of my mother." "I can't. You don't need to worry about money," he interrupted gently. "We'll cover your tuition. And some of the guests have offered to help you with living costs. You've given them something special tonight. Now they want to give something back." Tears filled Emily's eyes again. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. She nodded, quietly saying, thank you so much." That night, she didn't go back to the staff area to change into her normal clothes right away. People kept coming up to her, shaking her hand, asking questions, sharing how her music touched them. A woman in a silver dress said, "You reminded me of my daughter who passed away. She used to play the piano too. Thank you for bringing her memory back." One older man asked her to autograph his napkin, saying, "One day, I'll tell people I saw your first real performance." Emily laughed, still surprised that anyone wanted her autograph. Later, the event organizer came to her with an envelope. "This was meant for the original performer," he said, "but after tonight, it belongs to you." Emily opened it and found a thank you card, a note of appreciation, and a generous tip inside. She had never seen so much money handed to her at once. Her eyes filled with tears again, not from greed, but from deep gratitude. As the night came to an end, the ballroom slowly emptied, but the memory stayed alive in everyone's heart. The guests left smiling, still talking about the waitress who became the star of the evening. Back in the staff room, Emily finally changed out of her uniform. She folded it neatly and placed it in her locker. Somehow, it felt like she was folding up an old chapter of her life. She didn't know exactly what the future would bring, but she knew it would be different now. Something big had started, and there was no turning back. Before leaving the hotel, she called her mother. Her voice was full of excitement. As she said, "Mama, you won't believe what happened tonight." Her mother listened quietly, tears rolling down her cheeks on the other end of the phone. She had always known Emily had something special. Now, the world knew it too. Emily walked home under the night sky, the stars above shining brighter than usual. She felt free, hopeful, and full of music. She wasn't just a server anymore. She was a pianist again. She had played from her heart, and people had listened. Her life was no longer on pause. It was finally playing again the next morning. Emily woke up feeling like everything had changed. Sunlight came through her window, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel tired or worried. She felt alive, full of energy and hope. The events from the night before were still playing in her mind like a movie. Was it all real? Did she really perform in front of so many people? Did they really clap for her and offer her help? She picked up her phone and checked her messages. Her inbox was full. Friends, old classmates, and even people she didn't know were sending her kind messages. "I saw your video. You were amazing. Your story gave me goosebumps." Some messages came from faraway places. People were sharing her video across social media, and more people were watching it every hour. Emily's name was starting to spread. She opened one message from a music teacher she had admired when she was young. The message said, "You reminded us why music is powerful. You played with feeling, and that can't be taught. I'm proud of you." That message made her eyes tear up. It wasn't just about her talent. Now it was about how her story was touching hearts. That day, her phone didn't stop buzzing. A few reporters reached out to her, asking if she'd be willing to do interviews. A local newspaper wrote an article called "The Waitress Who Stole the Show," describing how her performance surprised everyone and left the room speechless. They wrote about how she went from serving drinks to stealing the spotlight on one night. Even the hotel staff were talking about her in the employee group chat. Someone wrote, "Did you guys see what Emily did last night?" Others replied with clapping emojis and hearts. The hotel manager, Mr. Carter, called her personally to say how proud he was. "You didn't just save the night, Emily," he said. "You gave us all something we'll never forget." Emily's mother was the happiest of all when Emily came home after the gala. She had sat beside her mom and told her every detail. Her mother held her hand tightly, eyes full of tears. "I always knew your music would change your life," she whispered. "And now it's starting." In the following weeks, things began to move quickly. Mr. E. Bennett kept his promise and arranged meetings for Emily with directors of top music schools. She visited one beautiful school with a wide piano hall and teachers who welcomed her warmly. They had seen her video too and said, "You're not just talented, you're ready." With the support of donors from the gala and Mr. Bennett's sponsorship, Emily was offered a full scholarship. She couldn't believe it. She didn't have to worry about money anymore. She could finally study music again. She could finally focus on her dream without carrying the heavy weight of bills and problems on her back. She also got to meet other young musicians. Some played violin, others sang, and some composed music. For the first time in years, Emily felt like she was in the right place, surrounded by people who spoke the same language of music and passion. She practiced every day and slowly. Her hands became stronger, her timing sharper, her style even deeper than before. Her teachers praised her discipline and emotion. They said, "It's clear that your music comes from your heart." Months later, she was invited to perform at a major event, a concert filled with musicians from different parts of the country. The same guests from the charity gala came too, excited to see her again, but this time she wasn't wearing an apron. She was dressed in a beautiful dark blue gown, walking confidently across the stage as the main performer. When she played her music that night, the crowd listened just as they had before, silent, emotionally amazed, and when she finished, they stood again, cheering for her with all their hearts. After the concert, people came up to her and said things like, "I remember you from the gala. Your journey inspired me to start playing. Again, you showed us that dreams can come true if we don't give up." Her story even reached music blogs, websites, and radio stations. She didn't become famous overnight like a movie star. But something better happened. She became respected, loved, and remembered. And the best part was that she remained humble. She never forgot her roots. She often said, "I was just a girl who got a chance and didn't let it pass by." She visited her old hotel sometimes, spoke kindly to the staff, and even helped raise funds for other young artists who needed support. She became a voice of hope for people who felt stuck, lost, or forgotten. Emily's journey reminded the world of something very important, that real talent can come from anywhere, even from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes all it takes is one moment, one brave step to turn a quiet life into a beautiful story. The night she played at the gala was truly a night to remember, but her music, that would be remembered forever.